Evening, everybody, and welcome along to this edition of The Final Whistle on LairMedia.tv. And our usual email, if you want to make any comments, is info@LairMedia.tv. And all our programs are up on our usual YouTube channels and all our platforms. And please don't forget to subscribe to our channel because it's free. Like the program itself, all the wisdom you hear on the program is free as well. Good evening, Jimmy O'Brien. Welcome along again. Jimmy's one of our regular guests.
Good evening, Pat. How are you doing?
But I must say, Joe, I've been looking forward to meeting Joe Waters. And I'll tell you, Joe, since we mentioned that you were going to be on the... by the way, welcome, and you're absolutely a warm welcome to The Final Whistle.
Well, thank you very much. I greatly appreciate it. It's great to be here.
And it's great to hear the Limerick accent anytime, no matter where you are or what you do. But when we were advertising this program, the amount of interest in Joe Waters around the place and afar, well, I think that it speaks for the way you're held, the way you were respected and regarded for your career. Now, for the few people that are left that may not know about you, you began your career with Wembley Rovers. Tell me, you were, I've been trying to sound out a few people since you agreed to come on. You were a pretty good athlete as well, Joe. You were an all-round. What made you strike up for the soccer, say, because you did play Gaelic football and hurling as well?
I played Gaelic football. I played hurling. I've been a lifelong soccer person. My father, Ned, was a big Pike Rovers man. My whole family were Pike Rovers. I actually started my career playing for Pike Rovers. And then when the schoolboy side of it went defunct, I moved over to Wembley. But at the same time, I was running for Limerick AC. I was playing for Old Christians. I played rugby for Shannon and Richmond. Played hurling for in the Rice Cup for Sexton Street. I ran for Sexton Street also. So, but in the finish, it was just the team sport aspect of it. And I just loved having the ball at my feet and running with it.
Right. And of course, tell me, how did you come to the attention of people from in Britain who asked you to come over to, I think you began in Leicester City in April 69. Is there something like that? April 69. How did that come about? How did you get from here to there, so to speak?
Well, life is sometimes just pure luck and being in the right place at the right time. And it just so happened to be that there was a Limerick man that was living in Leicester, and he worked at the Midland Hotel in Leicester, and he was home on holiday, and he went up to Cal's Park with a couple of friends because he was always interested in schoolboy football, and he happened to see me play in Cal's Park that day, and he was impressed with it. And when he went back, the chief scout for Leicester City, Ray Shaw, who had just joined the club, was staying in the Midland Hotel. And this gentleman told him about me. And the next thing, a letter arrived from Leicester City asking if it'd be okay for them to send a scout down to watch us play. And they came down. Actually, it took a while. There wasn't much happening. It was kind of back and forth a little bit. And then I got picked for the Irish schoolboy team. And we played Wales in Dalymount. We won 3-1. And I had a pretty decent game. And then I had a lot of interest from, other clubs. Liverpool, Man United, Arsenal, Coventry were first division team back then. There was a load of clubs that were interested after that game. And then Leicester, wrote back and said that they were coming to see me, and they came to see me and then offered me a trial.
So off you went. What age were you then? Were you 15, 16, was it?
I was 15 at the time when I went over there, yeah.
And How did you find that, Joe, then from the local scene over there? Because obviously, you be part of probably a big group trying to make it. Had you visions of a professional career as well? How long were you there in Leicester before you said, God, this, I could stay here?
I was there. We were supposed to go. Ronnie Walsh, who was playing with me at Wembley and is one of my best friends, went over with me, and we were supposed to stay a week because we had a rugby final that we were going to play in for Richmond, and we had a soccer final for Wembley that we were supposed to play in. So we were supposed to come back to play that Saturday and Sunday. And then Leicester said to us they wanted us to play in a trial match on Sunday morning. So we stayed for that. And after the trial match on Monday, Frank O'Farrell, a Cork man, called us into his office separately and he offered me a contract, an apprenticeship contract. And that I came home, just to get things together, and then went back over a couple of weeks later. And actually, Leicester were in the cup final that year against Man City at Wembley, and that was one of the first games that I ever saw Leicester play.
Could I ask you, Joe? That's the same Frank O'Farrell who went on to manage Manchester United, didn't he?
Yes, he did. Yeah.
Okay. And the second thing I would have to say is I saw that Leicester City and Manchester City game, and myself and a friend watched it in my uncle's house, because at that time there weren't too many places in the country that could actually get English matches. And I would have to say, I would have to ask you, probably one of the finest footballers I've ever seen played for Leicester on that day, a guy called Alan Clark. Did you ever get to meet him or even play with him?
I didn't get to play with him. I met him a few times. I played against him. I was an apprentice, and I was actually part of my job as an apprentice was to take care of the first team dressing room. So my job was when before training we had to come in and put every first team player, and every player had their own peg in the dressing room. So the first team dressing room was the home team dressing room, the reserve team dressing room was the visiting team dressing room. And you'd put out the kit in the morning for the first team players. And then after training finished, you pick it all up and then you put it in the room. And Sniffer, as his nickname was, Alan Clark, was in the dressing room then. It was that summer actually that we sold him to Leeds, I think, for 165,000 or something like that. Yeah. But then, years later, I played against him when I was in the first team at Leicester. We played Leeds at Leicester. And then I played against him when he was at Barnsley, when he was player coach at Barnsley. And he actually tried to sign me at Barnsley when he was a manager there.
Lovely man. There was a story went around about Alan Clark, and I always wondered, was it true? Apparently, he was so nervous before every match he ever played, no matter how important, whether it was a cup final or the third round of the FA Cup against somebody from the Midland League. Apparently, he used to throw up before a match. He got so nervous. Is that true?
That's not an unusual thing for guys.
Okay.
There have been a few guys that were like that. Were so nervous beforehand that they got an upset stomach, and they would have to go in the bathroom and get ready. But I hadn't heard that now about Sniffer, but it wouldn't surprise me one bit because I do know it happened.
Yeah, because it always struck me because he looked so calm and arrogant on the field. He looked like a guy who was just, playing in a pub league team and this didn't matter anything to him. Do you know where I heard it actually? Johnny Giles, who would have played with Alan Clark in that
Right.
great Leeds team. He was the one who said that Clark, and as I remember, Giles said Clark was one of the players who used to get dreadfully upset in advance of a match over his nerves. And he was the guy who it just didn't look like it. Apparently one of the hatchet men for Leeds at the time had a similar problem. You know, you would think that, although there again he was probably making space in his stomach before he started chewing the opposing players. But I'm glad that story's been proved right. It just goes to show, as I think we said this last week, Pat, that sportsmen are still men. We seem to think that they're, superhuman and they don't get affected by nerves, or indeed, as we spoke about with regard to that girl in the French Open,
Yeah.
it does get on top of you, which begs a question that I don't know whether Pat was going to ask you or not. Did you ever get affected like that? Did the game ever get under your skin so badly, or did it stay a sport with you?
No, I was never. I would be nervous the night before.
Yeah.
If it was a big game, I might have difficulty sleeping. But really, no. I mean, I never. I was always pretty, pretty calm about it. And I was always pretty focused, but I never had that kind of nervousness ever. My biggest problem was that I always needed to go to the bathroom just as we were about to kick off because my nerves were getting to me, and so now you have to wait till half time kind of thing. But that was just my nervy thing. But as to anything else, no, I was able to handle it pretty well.
So you're one of the superhuman ones, then, in other words.
And man, you're tuned to the final whistle here on NerdMedia.tv, and our special guest is Joe Waters. Now, Joe, of course, you weren't a big man, and as the man said, you were 5'7". Now, there's been a lot of, at the time that you were playing soccer, of course, Giles himself wasn't small. I was small as well, Johnny Giles. Were you conscious of that, and were you aware that you had to be a little bit tougher than the usual player because of the fact that you were only 5'7", that you were well able to look after yourself? Would that be correct and fair?
Can I jump in here? Because Joe, can I say something? It's relatively obvious that Pat Barry has never watched a junior football match in Limerick, because if he did, and if he saw Calves and Wembley and Pike and Bala in their day playing, he would never have asked you, did a Limerick man ever get bullied on a soccer pitch in England? Because I very much definitely answered the question.
But yeah, no, I mean, it was a tough game, I mean, the physical side of it was something that never really bothered me. I was always quick, so I was always confident that I could, get the ball before people. Tackling was just a part of it. I remember on my debut for Leicester, Terry Venables was playing for Queen's Park Rangers, and the boys warned me beforehand. They said, "Be careful when you're around him." He said, because the first thing he'll look to do, he'll try and do you, to set the tone. So the first time I got around him, I kind of got my first blow in, and I was all right after that. He never did anything to me after that. But I was determined I wasn't going to get bullied by anybody in that.
You got the retaliation in first.
Exactly.
But that match, before we move on, Mary was great to find. She found the footage. But that match, that must have been one. Of course, you had many good days, Joe. Obviously, many good days, and a long career as well. Of course, you must have been blessed in not having a serious injury through your career, did you?
I was very lucky, very fortunate. The only injury that I had early on was I broke my nose a couple of times. And that's going for headers with fellas that were way bigger than me, and got an elbow on the side of the snout for my troubles. But yeah, I mean, I was very fortunate. I had a record number of games going for Grimsby until I got injured at Derby, and the injury I got was pretty unique injury. I got a ruptured urethra, and that put me, that kind of ended my streak at something like 250 games or something like that. So I was very fortunate that I never had any bad injuries. I never had any knee problems, anything like that. So I was very lucky in that.
And that, before we go on to that 74 FA Cup quarterfinal with QPR when you scored those two wonderful goals, right?
Yeah.
I saw that team actually playing because I was in London in 73. I'm trying to be hazy, but we used to go up to Loftus Road every second because it's the nearest pitch to us, you know. So I saw a lot of those characters playing. And I mean, they were a pretty good team, Joe, at the time, QPR, you know.
Oh, they were a fine team. I mean, they at that time they were. I mean, on the day of the game, I think that QPR were fifth in the league, and Leicester were sixth in the league, or vice versa. And both teams were really entertaining teams. Had fine players. I mean, you looked at QPR. They had Phil Parkes in goal. They had Frank McClintock and Terry Mancini. They had Dave Clement at right back, Ian Hazel at left back.
Was Stan Bowles playing with them then, Joe?
Yes, Stan played. Don Givens played. Dave Thomas, Terry Venables, Jerry Francis. So they had a terrific team at the time, and it was a great game. It was a great game of football. Unfortunately, we came out on the good end of it.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it was. I mean, that was the tie of the round. The two best teams playing each other on that day.
And who did you meet then in the semi-final, Joe?
We got Liverpool in the semi-final. Newcastle and Burnley were the other semi-final, and it's kind of an ironic thing because if we had, I believe if we had drawn any of the other two, that we would have beaten them. As it was, we drew with Liverpool at Old Trafford 0-0, and then we lost the replay at Villa Park 3-1. And that put an end to our kind of cup dream. But the irony of it was that, if we hadn't got knocked out and, some other players may have been available to go on the tour. And because we went to South America, we went to Brazil, Chile, and Uruguay in the summer. And I was chosen for that trip. And
that's
a great trip it was.
That was in 74, was it, Joe?
Yes.
Yeah. With the Irish team?
Yeah.
Who was the manager then in 74?
Johnny Giles.
Johnny Giles.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He was still playing. Was he the player manager?
He was player manager, yeah.
Yeah, I remember vaguely that trip to South America. How did you find that? Of course, at 74, you were still a young man, like,
Well, yeah, and like all young men, sometimes you're a bit, you can call it naive or stupid, whatever way you want to look at it. But, you know, I'm in Rio de Janeiro, and we go up to the statue of Christ, and we see all the sights in Rio. And I don't have a photograph of my time there. You know, because I thought I'd do it all again. You
Yes.
know, I mean, once you've done it once, it's going to happen every so often. But then later you realize, no, it only happens the once for you.
And then you went on loan to Grimsby Town.
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Would it be true to say that you became some kind of a folk hero in Grimsby?
I was very fortunate. I went there for on a month's loan, and I scored in my debut at Millwall, and we played a couple of games at Grimsby, and I played pretty well, and the fans really took to me. But at the end of it, the club said they couldn't afford me, so I was going back to Grimsby, and I got back to Grimsby, and Tom Casey, who was the manager of Grimsby Town at the time, called me up, and he said, "Hey, you've created a bit of a movement here." I said, "Oh, really? What's going on?" He said, "Well," he said, "do you really want to come here?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I enjoyed, my month there." And he said, "Well, the fans are raising money to buy you, and they're pressuring the club to buy you." So he said, "If we go through with this," he said, "will you definitely come?" And I said, "Because he said, I don't want to do this, and then you turn around and say no, So I said, "No, I'm coming." I said, "You get it." So people, I was the first footballer that the fans had a whip round for and made a contribution to buying me.
that's I was reading that too. That's fantastic altogether. There is some of the transfer fee that Leicester wanted for you. That's right here. And you had, I think, there are some clubs that players go to, and you being one of them, that you know yourself in your heart of hearts that, I feel so comfortable here and I feel so appreciated here, and I can express myself fully as a soccer player here, and they have the confidence in me. That's what I'm trying to say, Joe. So all of that came together, I would suggest, in Grimsby Town for you.
Yes, it did. Not at the beginning, because, to be fair, we were in a relegation battle. My first 2 seasons there, we had a very experienced dressing room, but a lot of guys were coming to the end of their careers, and they weren't as motivated. And unfortunately, Tom Casey got the sack, but he had put together a group of young people like myself, Mick Brawley, Nigel Batch, Bobby Cummings was already there. And then there was a group of young lads that were in the reserve team. And ironically, on the day that Tom Casey moved into his house, he got fired. And John Newman took over. And John kind of had the task of clearing out the dead wood and getting rid of some of the players that were kind of not giving it the full 90, as they say. And he put the young guys in, and I was at 24. I was one of the older guys. All the rest of them were like 17 and 18. So it was we got relegated to the 4th division, and in some ways that was a good thing, because in the 4th division we kind of found our feet a little bit, and we finished 6th the first year, and then the second year we finished 2nd and got promoted back into the 3rd division. So that was kind of how it all worked out, and then I started coming into my own at that point. I started becoming more of a leader on the field and what have you. And so it was Grimsby was a great place for me to be, in every way, in every way.
And I dare say you still have some excellent friends even today from Grimsby.
Oh yes, yes. I'm in contact with people all the time.
Now, there are many stories, Joe, I've been told about you. I'm not going to repeat them now on the program at all, because we'll keep it we'll keep it for so that the kids can see the program as well. But I have to remind you of a story where you were asked to play against Northern Ireland. You got a call up.
That's correct.
And you could tell us the story, and you were delighted, of course. Go on, tell us the story when you got into your car and able to go to the airport.
So we were actually on every year we used to go to, there was a factory outside of just outside of Grimsby. That was a duck factory, and it sent ducks, Cherry Valley. It sent ducks all over the country, frozen ducks, and we used to go and we'd visit with the workers there and what have you, and we'd get a frozen duck, the whole thing. Well, while we were there, and it was a Monday afternoon, as I remember, and we had no games coming up, so that the manager has us on the bus, and he's giving us a day off kind of thing, and we're letting loose, and we're stopping at a couple of places on the way, and having a railroad time. So we're out there anyway, and we're interacting with the workers and touring the factory and what have you, and we get a call. Joe's got to get himself to Manchester tonight. He's getting an early morning flight to Dublin. He's going to meet up with the Irish team. Okay, all right. So we get back, and the boys are all there. We say goodbye. I get in my car, and I realize I've got no petrol, and the petrol stations there shut at 6 o'clock. So we get back after 6 o'clock. So now I'm in a bit of a bind. I don't know what to do. So I have a friend, a very good friend, who I just spoke to yesterday. Actually, he was a pub landlord. Bye-bye. And I went to him and I says, Rolly, do you have any petrol in your car? And he said, why? I said, I need to get to Manchester Airport tonight, and I have no petrol. And he says, no, he says, I don't. And I said, well, do you have any tubing I can use that I can get? Because I didn't have anything. I was thinking I can siphon that. If somebody has petrol, I can siphon it out of the tank and get it. So I'm there anyway, and I can't again. So I go to George Kerr's house. George is our manager at the time. And I knock on his door, and I said to him, George, I have no petrol to get to the airport. He said, I just filled up my club car today. So he said, let's see if we can find something to siphon it. And I said, well, I got some tubing here from Rowley. So he says, great. But he says, I'm not siphoning that stuff. He says, you can do it. So I'm down on my hands and knees, putting the tube into the tank, and then I'm sucking on it. And of course, you get petrol in the back of your throat and what have you. So I get the petrol anyway, and I make it to Manchester. And when I get to Manchester, I find out that the airport is closed. It's been fogged in. So now we have to get on the bus and go down to Birmingham to fly from Birmingham.
Yeah.
Well, I get from Birmingham and I get into Dublin, and I've missed the guys were going to pick me up at on the team bus at the airport. So now there's a message at the airport for me. Get to the train station. You're getting the train up to Belfast, and I'm terrified at this stage now because I've never been up to Northern Ireland before, and it's like a bit intimidating. I'm on my own and what have you.
This was the numbers, wasn't it, Joe?
Yeah. So I get in the train, and luckily enough, there was some journalists from Dublin that were going up, so I sat with those guys, and then I got a taxi, and the taxi driver says to me, he says, "Are you here for the big match tomorrow?" And I said, "No, I'm here on business." I didn't want to tell him that I was going to be with the Republic. I was afraid I'd end up somewhere bad. But so anyway, we went out into the hills somewhere where the hotel that we were staying in. And it was a little bit unnerving for me, to say the least.
And that didn't one of the Irish players get injured? One of the Irish players get injured before that match? Was it, or was it another one? Was it?
Well, before that match, Liam Brady got injured on the Saturday playing for Arsenal. That's how I got the call up.
Yes.
And I got the call up, and I was on the bench. Chris Hooton was there, but he was one of the younger guys. And what Josie usually did was he'd bring 18 players in, and at that time only 16 suited up. And he'd bring a couple of young guys just to get around the atmosphere of the team and what have you. And so I managed to, I was called in, and I was on the bench. And Jerry Daly got hurt. He got hit by a bottle or a brick or something like that. It was thrown from the crowd. And I got onto the field. That's how I got onto the field that day.
See, that was 79. Was it 78, 79?
Yeah.
That was tough, Jimmy. I mean, imagine getting called on because a fella got a belt of a brick. I heard a big tackle from behind, but
I can tell you, Joe, I'd slip coming off the bench and I twist my ankle so I wouldn't have to go out there and face those. Do you know what those Northern Ireland games? It used to always make me laugh. I remember a report on one of the games in the early 80s. You had the Northern Ireland crowd were standing on the terraces, going on about the effing Catholic tags playing for the Republic of Ireland, and they were going to kill them on the way out. Somebody did a quick survey and found that there were more Protestants on the Republic side and more Catholics on the Northern Ireland side, which just makes the whole thing bloody ludicrous when you think about it. Like, they were going to kill the Irish players, and they were all Protestants like themselves, apart from a handful. Actually, the ones who probably weren't Protestant were the ones who weren't born in the Republic of Ireland. So that would have made up a good chunk of the team in those days, although we weren't that bad. That's a very interesting story, all of a sudden. Did you get the match? Just as a matter of interest.
No, we lost 1-0. So
yeah, that was a qualifier, was it? Well, at that stage, only one team out of that group, I think, Joe, was qualifying, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And England were in that group as well, funny enough, further.
I'm sorry.
England were in that group as well. If my memory.
I think they were, yeah. England were because
Ron Greenwood was the manager, was he?
I'm not sure if Greenwood was the manager then, or was it Don Revie? Because I think we drew 1-1, or did we lose 1-0 at Wembley? Trying to remember exactly what the score was. But yeah, that was a tough one first. That one, we had a couple of real near misses that would have taken us to a couple of the tournaments that were unfortunate. We lost in France when Platini was playing, and then we lost the last two games of the season. We played Russia in Kiev, and then we played Switzerland in Bern, and we lost both of those, which knocked us out. If we'd won one of them, I think we would have gone through. Right. So it was just it was tough. It was tough.
Yeah, the final whistle is the program here for people looking in on learmedia.tv. Please subscribe to the channel, and it's free by pressing the red button. And our special guest on the final whistle with Jimmy and myself this evening is Joe Waters. We're delighted to have you, Joe. Now, Joe, eventually, anyway, tell me, how did you get to America? I know you're going to say I flew, but
I'd never be that cheeky. Never.
how did you get from Grimsby Town to the United States? Was it a
Well,
contact?
it was funny. I just been I got freedom of contract at Grimsby. I was one of the first guys that was able to get it. And how it happened was if they weren't able to offer you the same money that you were on the previous season, then you became a free agent and you
Right.
could go wherever you wanted. And that's what happened to me. So I used to have a video shop in Grimsby, and I was in the shop one day and I get a phone call, and it was Freddie Goodwin. Freddie Goodwin is a former Busby Babe, was manager of Brighton, was always also manager at Birmingham City when Trevor Francis and came through there. And he was over in Tacoma, and he asked me, he said, would you be interested in coming to America? And I said, yeah. I said, I would. He said, okay. He said, would you be interested in coming over and having a look at the place? And I said, yeah. So he said, okay. He said, I'll be in touch with you. And I get a phone call a couple of days later, and it tells me that my flight is from Heathrow or Gatwick, I forget which, at such and such a time, and get yourself down there, and then we'll meet you at the airport. So I came over to Tacoma. I came for a week, and they offered me a contract, and I signed, and that was it. I actually had 2 or 3 other clubs in the US that wanted me as well at the same time.
Yeah.
But I decided on Tacoma because they were the first ones to offer me, and
And where were they located, Joe?
we're located in the northwest of the United States. We're just Seattle is just above us, and then above there, about 60 miles or so, is the Canadian border.
All right. All right. Yeah. And you spent, I mean, when what I'm trying to say is what kind, in comparison to the soccer and football in the UK, and now going to Seattle or Tacoma Stars in 1984, what was the standard like? Was it a good setup to go into? Was it well organized?
Oh, it was very well organized. Freddie Goodwin was our head coach. Bob McNabb, who won the double with Arsenal, was our assistant coach. John Best, who played for Liverpool, was our general manager. So it was a real good organization, but it was in its infancy. When I went, it was on only their second season, and you had to. It's a real tough job building a franchise from scratch. And they wanted to do it with a lot of local kids. So, it did for a little while. It went well. In fact, on my second season, we were top of the league for quite a while before we kind of ran out of steam. And then they decided to go in a different direction and start bringing more experienced players in. So we did. But the standard was good. I mean, I played against some great players. Indoor is such a totally different game than outdoor. It's it's the size of a hockey arena, so there's 5 field players and a goalkeeper, and it is just highly intense the whole time. And you have the boards that you have to get used to. There's no offside in it, so it's a tough game to get used to. But it's such a fun game to play as a player because you're constantly on the move, you're constantly involved. So, that's how I got here. The talent level was, throughout. And I got there at the time when the outdoor league had just folded. So the NASL had just folded. So all the best players from the NASL were coming indoor to play. So
All right.
the talent level was huge. I mean, we played against Kaz Dana, who played in the semi-final of the World Cup for Poland. Played against Johan Neskins, who scored a penalty in the World Cup final against Germany. And numerous other guys, Giorgio Chinalia, Gordon Hill, and Steve Daly, who was the first £1 million player from Wolves to Man City. And just guys that all had good careers in different leagues. I mean, it was a hodgepodge of Europeans, South Americans. The talent level was really high.
You want to ask a question, Jim, about the standard today? Will
Yeah, it's when the NASL started, Joe. We were talking about it over here, and there was a fairly heated discussion went on about how to grow the game. And when they started bringing in Pele and George Best and all the big names to try to draw crowds into the game, I always thought that they were doing it the wrong way around, because I played football since I was 6, nowhere near at your level, but I always knew it was a game that needed to build from the grassroots up. And when they started the NASL, they were trying to build it from the top down. And I always felt that when it went into the colleges, that was the only way it was going to work. Did you find that over there? Did you find the game grew when they started getting local kids? And I was intrigued to hear you say that Tacoma themselves started off trying to blood young players into the team. Do you think that's how it's as strong as it is now? Because they've got college scholarship schemes, and younger players are playing it.
It's Jim. It's funny that you say that, and it's an irony really, because the Seattle Sounders were here back in the NASL days, and you had the likes of Jimmy Gabriel, who played for Everton, won the league with Everton. You had Mike England, you had Alan Hudson, Jeff Hurst. I think Moore might have even been here. Bobby Moore may have been here for a bit. But all these guys, and these guys are all still legends in Seattle. And these guys really got the local population amped up. Alan Hinton was the coach of that team. John Best was the general manager of that team up there. But they did that. And then the whole thing kind of went flat. And then they went back to but what the USSF did that was very, very clever, it was that they got a lot of these foreign players and had them do summer camps with kids. And they got kids, they would do a week-long camp for the whole summer in different areas. So they got the grassroots interest in it. And then the USSF made boys and girls soccer equal when they were financing it and doing all that stuff. And then the interest from there started going. And I was the same when I came here. I did summer camps, I did appearances at schools and what have you to get kids interested in all that stuff. And now the amount of kids that are playing in the States is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, here in Washington State, we probably have, I want to say, maybe 120, 150,000 kids playing soccer underage. And now the thing has gone the other way, because what they're talking about now, and Pat talked about it earlier a little bit with the men's national team, is that they're saying now that going to college is taking away 4 years of your development because you're playing against your own age players all the time. So you're not being pushed for development. You're not able to be accelerated the way you're doing. And they're getting into bad habits for it. So now what a lot of guys are doing is that they're skipping the college route, and they're going straight into the academies of like the Sounders and Dallas and all those teams that are out there. And they're starting to produce them. And now they're starting also to send them overseas. So a lot of
Like
Americans
Pulisic.
are playing in Europe.
Yeah, like Pulisic.
Yeah. So that's really, the potential for soccer over here is absolutely unbelievable. I think that, and that people can laugh at this if they want to, but with the amount of ethnic players that are available in this country, just from all over the world, that this is going to be like Brazil before, that eventually that's what it's going to get to, just because they have that many players playing it. It's huge. I mean, we have, you go to New York has hundreds of thousands of players playing over there. So it's only really a matter of time before that all comes to fruition.
I think you're sort of seeing it conversely at the moment, that how the American women's team have exploded onto the world scene almost out of the blue. I mean, and they just happened. And it's funny you should say it. They have a very ethnically diverse panel, and the players are from all over the place. And I'd agree with you, Joe. I think that if it keeps growing the way it's growing, with the population that they have and with the emphasis that the whole country has on athletics and fitness and the whole lot, I can't see how they won't become a powerful force in world football. And I would expect to live to see it. And I'm only a year older than you, by the way. Just
yeah. So, but I agree with you. And, you touched on something there a couple of minutes ago, which is very, very true. What's happening, and what you talked about, throwing money at it, and it was kind of not what it should have been at the time. What we have here is, and I was a part of it, so I feel it's tough kind of speaking out about it, but we have a reverse model here where the money coming into the game goes to coaches, and this is at the youth level and below. I mean, you have coaches here that are making 15 to 20 grand a team a year to coach, and you have people that are coaching 3 and 4 teams and making a living out of it. And that's, and players are paying $2,500 to be a part of a team, a part of a club. And that's how it is here. And until such time as we get that reversed and nobody has to pay or pay very little, and the money goes back into the programs, and everybody can afford to play, then that's when the real, you look here, and in the various areas. I live in North Tacoma here, and we have an Hispanic club that they're all, some of these kids are playing 2 and 3 years up, and they're all in the same club, but they can't afford to join any other clubs, and they're all good players, but they can't.
why don't you organise a pile of kids to march a little bit up the road to a wooded area in Seattle and knock on the door of Mr. Gates and say, listen, by the way, instead of pumping money into bridge, would you give us a couple of 100 million and we will get soccer onto the world stage, please, Bill, my friend. And I know where his house is, his beautiful house.
Oh, it's a nice house as well.
Yeah, but I think you are right, and I always rail against the huge money that's going into teams like Manchester City and Chelsea and Tottenham, all this Arab money and the whole lot, and it does spoil the game because I hope I don't upset you when I say it this way, but soccer was always a working class game, always was,
Oh, yes.
and it still starts at working class levels. And to see guys in wearing sheets around their head coming along and telling the scout to go out and pay 150 million for some 22-year-old out in Borussia Dortmund, I think that's going too far. But I think if you could get a level of decent investment in soccer in the States, it would take off. Because if a young fella, I mean, when you think about it, George Best couldn't have afforded to pay money to play soccer. Bobby Moore couldn't have afforded to pay money to play soccer. And all those talents would have been lost. How many talented players in the States just can't make it because mommy just says, no, I just plain don't have that sort of money. It's an awful shame because the pool, I said it already, the player pool in America must be bloody huge, absolutely huge.
And Joe,
Sorry, Pat.
And Joe, since I think you retired around the middle 90s anyway from playing, and
Correct.
You're still obviously involved in football, that's your life, that has been your life. And you have been involved in coaching, I believe, in America.
Correct, yeah.
And how, and as you said there, God, I didn't realize the nuts and bolts of the thing, how, you have to almost pay to play the game, which is astonishing to me now on the one level when you look at the success of the women's team, goes without saying, but the American, some of those United States soccer team at the national level has had some success, It hasn't been all doom and gloom, and they have been very unlucky at a few World Cups, because they had a decent team out in the field,
right?
And
and I mean that's what I'm saying. We have, in this country we have some very, very, very good players, and they're with the potential to have more. I went and got my coaching badges through the United States Soccer Federation, and one of the things that Bob Gansler, who was the U.S. national team coach at the time, was giving a lecture, and afterwards I was speaking to him about stuff, and he told me that there were more players playing outside of the United States Soccer Federation than there were playing inside it, because the ethnic communities did not trust the people that were running the game. And that's been a huge thing. You can go around and you can find every other weekend or every weekend, you will find alternate leagues that are not affiliated with the United States Soccer Federation because they don't trust them. And so when that all starts coming together, and they finally get some common sense and it all gels, that's the time I think that there's going to be a massive change around in what's happening, because you're going to have you have great athletes. That's one of the things that the Americans are and have great athletes. But then you have all the other communities that are out there that have the skills and the savvy of the game. And once you marry the two or three together, then it's going to be something to behold down the road.
That's true, Joe. The
If,
final
if they can, sorry, Pat, if they can beat the whole the whole George Floyd atmosphere that's out there at the moment, Joe, and I do not want to make this a program about racism, but you can see how the ethnic communities in the States, first of all, don't trust the white authorities in the first place. And then they look at FIFA and they see another good reason not to be trusting the football authorities. So it's double whammy, you know. Whitey is looking after me and Whitey is a crook. So it's going to take something. And I think, you know, I don't want to be blowing your trumpet too much, but I think it's somebody like you who would have the understanding of where the ethnic communities are coming from, because you came up the hard road yourself, and you know that it's a good foundation. I mean, when you think about it, you would have a pile of people from Mexico, which would have a good soccer history. A lot of people from Brazil, goes without saying, have a superb soccer history. So there would be a significant number of people in America for whom soccer is in their DNA and good soccer is in their DNA. And they're just wary of getting involved in it, and they're going to be lost, you know. Beat the drum, Joe. Beat the drum, Joe. People will listen to you.
Well, we keep trying to do it, you know, we keep trying to get the message across, and hopefully, you know, soon somebody will start listening to it. But, you know, just to touch on your point there, you know, you can go back to New York and Chicago and Philadelphia, all those big cities back east, and you would have leagues back there that Croatian teams are playing in, that German teams are playing in, Spanish teams are playing in, and they're all playing with their own community. The Irish would be the same, and that all, you know, and all of them are involved, and they would not think of playing for anybody else other than in that environment. And it's, and then, you know, and then that filters all the way down to their children, and it becomes kind of, you know, its own little thing. So that's the stuff that you're fighting. But once they see the likes of the Christian Pulisic's and those guys making it big, then that's going to be a huge help in getting people out to see, hey, you know, look, there is a chance for us. I mean, a kid from Pennsylvania that can go up to Chelsea for whatever amount of money he went for, you know,
and get paid lots of money as well.
Yeah. Before we finish, Joe, I don't know, have you kept what kind of a close eye you've kept on the soccer scene in Limerick? But it's a microcosm of what we're talking about, because they couldn't afford to have a full-time soccer, you know, professional soccer set up here in Limerick. So they've done what they should have done, in my opinion, years ago. They have a team now in the first division called Treaty United. They've gone back to local talent, drawn from the local junior clubs, which is fantastic, because it gives you, as a junior player beginning, a pathway to senior soccer. And I think the structures they put in place with Treaty United, they are doing pretty well. They're joint third in the table. They're doing very well. And it's a Midwest feeder club now. And all the junior soccer clubs in the area have some kind of a goal now as well, so that they can progress their career, you know, the League of Ireland. And I think that other clubs in the area could take a leaf out of their books, you know. But,
another thing, Pat, sorry, you haven't touched on it, and I'm surprised with you. But one of the things that Treaty United did when they set up was they pitched at having a first division, which is the second tier of League of Ireland soccer. But they also simultaneously formed a ladies' Treaty United team who were playing in the ladies' FAI as well. So it's I mean, I'd be sitting here saying, I really don't care if Treaty United do well in either the women's league or the men's league. But I think that, as Pat says, this has to be the way forward for places that are not getting the money. I mean, I don't know, Joe, whether you kept in touch with the FAI authorities, but it's a damning indictment of what was done by Watford Gouger. When you have the situation where the team that wins the League of Ireland, the money they get was 1/3 of what the chairman of the FAI was paying himself. And it's absolutely disgraceful. Absolutely. The guy should be in jail alongside his father, who should have gone to jail anyway.
No.
I needless to relate, Joe, I know something about the family. But I think Limerick were spot on. It had to be the plan. And it's good for soccer in the area as well, because as Pat says, some guy playing for Newmarket Celtic knows that there's a scout from Treaty United there coming out to watch it. And if he gets to play for Treaty United, it means that scouts from the English teams might start looking, because this is where they're going to find the young talent. Just a thought. You did mention Coventry City when you were there, and as I said, I'm from Watford, and when Watford, before you left, there used to be some games, great games between Watford and Limerick. You might have been at some of them when Alpha Lucan was playing and Kevin Fitzpatrick was the goalkeeper.
I was a regular at the Markets Field.
Sure, I probably you know, I probably got hit by one of your bottles at one of the games.
Yeah.
But no, it's Watford, the Watford team, the foundation of the Watford team. Peter Thomas was probably alongside Vincey was one of the best keepers the League of Ireland has ever seen. But Watford got a lot of players from Coventry, and there was a sort of a tacit understanding that we would get players from Coventry who were not really, they didn't want to send them out on loan, and they weren't going to make the first team. So they were going to get competitive games every single week. They were being left out on loan to a club that didn't have the wage structure that they could afford. So Coventry paid most of their wages. Worked out very well. And I always felt, and I think the US League could possibly benefit from something like this. Do you think that there's any way that a club like Chelsea could go to Tacoma Stars and say, we will make you a nursery club for us? Do you think it would be good for American football that English clubs with pots of money would take a US club under their wing effectively and share?
Oh yeah, I see what you're saying.
Well, we already have something like that happening, and I think we're going to see a little bit more of it, because Manchester City have New York City as their club. Yeah. And then I think Man United under the Glazers are talking about getting a club under their wing to do it. And I think it would be great for the development of players to do that. I mean, I'm reading the paper this morning, and at the end of the season, there's something like 33 players coming back from being out on loan to Chelsea. That's how many players they have out on loan. 33.
Isn't that astonishing altogether, because of all the money we have?
Yeah.
Three full teams.
Yeah.
3 teams.
Yeah. And that's the thing with it, no one, or that kind of flies under the radar. But what if you were to put those guys somewhere that they could play full time, and develop full time, and it might help everyone.
Yeah,
I can't let us go, Jim. I can't let Joe go, because we'll certainly be coming back to you, Joe, whether you want to or not, for part 2 of this, because we have so little touched on, but I can't let you go without mentioning. Would you be a Pike Rovers man through and through in all your family? Would they be Pike?
Yes.
Because we had a lot of diehard Pike Rovers people on. What time will he be on now? I don't know whether they wanted to throw eggs at the program or not now. I don't know that. They didn't clarify that. But I'll tell you, Joe, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. And we will come back for part 2 if you're amenable to that. But for all the people who will be watching this now later on, and all the people who wished you well, too many to mention, Joe, but you're still number 1 in soccer in Limerick. Whether you believe it or not, we believe it anyway, because no doubt about it. And the love and the affection they have for you shone through all the messages that came in so far, you know. And we will, of course, when we have this done with all the stuff on it, we will send it to your good self as well to have a look at it and show your grandkids. By the way, how are all the family? I forgot to ask you at the top of the program.
Everyone's great. My wife is fantastic. 3 daughters. My youngest daughter, we just found out a couple of weeks ago, is going to have her first baby in November. So my middle daughter, Lindley, Shauna is the youngest one. Lindley is the middle one. She lives in Limerick and she's working in Limerick. And Kelly, the oldest, is here in Tacoma with us. So we have one still left at home. But everybody is great.
Fantastic, Joe. And again,
Joe, could I make a comment here, which is going to really piss off all the Pike Rovers fans? Did you ever thank Pike Rovers for not having a youth team continuation that you could play with them? Because listening to what happened to you, you were discovered playing for Wembley, and if you'd been able to play with Pike, you would still be in Limerick right now. Well, maybe not. You probably wouldn't be. But
no, you're right. I mean, absolutely right. And that's why I say, you know, I mean, sometimes it's just the look of the draw.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
absolutely.
You know, just like you said, if Pike had continued, would that have happened? I don't know. I don't know. And,
well, it might have happened because you might have been spotted playing for Pike youths against Wembley youths. So
yeah,
I think, Joe, I think if your name is on it, your name is on it. No matter what happens, you'll get through. And I tell you, talking to you for the first time for the last hour, your success couldn't have happened to a nicer man. It's been a big pleasure to meet you.
It's a pleasure to meet you guys, and thank you for having me. It's,
welcome.
You know, it's just so great to hear people talk about soccer in Limerick and all the stuff that's going on. I just love it because, like I said, you know, I was a Marketsfield rat, you know, growing up. I lived in Garryowen, so every Sunday that they were at home, I was up there. Somebody lifted me over the turnstiles, and Kevin and Al and Joe Casey and Ewan Fenton and all those guys were all my heroes. And then, you know, you had the likes of Tony Meany and Joe Burke, you know, Joe Manny, all local guys that made it up there and were playing up there. And of course, Des Kennedy, Johnny Walsh from the Avenue, Kilmurray Avenue, where I lived. All lads that played up there. My brother Dermot played for Limerick for a while when Kevin was the manager there. So
I actually played against some of them, Joe, in Interfirm. Yeah. I played against Des Kennedy. Only once, thankfully, because I don't think I would have survived the second session against Des Kennedy. But he was great. He was a great striker in his day as well, Des. He's still working up. He became an auto electrician, didn't he?
Yeah.
And he had his place up beside the Marketsfield, as I remember. Yeah. Mary Honan would know it because I think she lived just up the road from as well. So right. There we go. You see, I'm not. The old brain hasn't gone yet.
Yeah. Well, Des Kennedy's father was the first person that put an organised team together for us down in Kilmurray Avenue, and we played Dominic Savio because Paddy Brennan was Mrs. Kennedy's brother,
They had a wonderful team in the 70s, Cork Hibernians, with Dave Bucuzzi and
I
Joe.
knew, Jesus,
Oh, yeah.
Joe, I should have told you before you started. Don't mention Hibs or Celtic, whatever you do. Barry will be on it like shit off a shovel, I'm telling you. You shouldn't have opened your mouth. Shouldn't have opened your mouth. We start hearing now about Carl Davenport and Dave Wigan.
I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll have to bring this edition to a close, but we'll come back to Cork. We'll come back to Cork Hibernians in part 2. But Joe and Jimmy and myself, I'll count us outside from this edition of the Final Whistle on LairMedia.tv, from our wonderful guest, Joe Waters, and James O'Brien, our co-host, from this edition, until we meet again. Good evening and God bless, lads.